closer?
No, it's fine.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Noshel.
Noshel. I was going to say Nochel, so I'm glad I asked.
Yeah, Noshel.
Slide on here.
It's on?
Yep.
Welcome to the Magnetic Heart Radio Show on 103.7 and 107.1 FM, Radio Free Nashville. I am excited today to have Michael Noshel, Mikey Noshel.
What's
Is it
up?
Michael? But then
Well, yeah, I was born. It's on my birth certificate. It
It's
says
Michael.
it doesn't say Mikey. It says Michael. Yes, yeah.
Awesome. And so I met Mikey at Sunflower Cafe.
Yes.
And
Shout out Sunflower Cafe.
Yes, we love Sunflower Cafe.
Yeah.
And then it's amazing because we've known each other for a little while, but then
Totally.
finally when we got to have a conversation, I'm
Right.
just wowed and blown away with all the things that you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
And I was like, you've got to come on the show.
You're
So-
one of my people. We're out there doing things,
Yes.
taking care of each other,
Yes.
loving one another. It's beautiful.
It is.
So,
And-
yeah, thank you for all you do, and that's what's up right there. Thanks for having me on here.
I've got
You're
a,
showing
there
the
we go.
internet the Summer of
Summer
Love
of Love.
retreat series. That love, spreading it, and it
Yes.
takes some effort to spread love in this world, and even hopefully maybe we'll go into what is love, what a definition of love we can go into, and what direction to go with love. Love sounds like a wonderful idea,
Yes.
and it's really hard to know how to love, and
Not only how to love,
Yeah.
but how to receive love.
that's a tough one. Yeah, definitely. I
So-
have a few opinions on that.
Okay, so we'll talk
Yeah,
about that.
definitely.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
Mikey is with Against the Stream,
Yes,
Buddhist Meditation Society.
correct.
And I think first we have to say, what is meditation? I think
Yeah.
that most of our listeners know, but for those that don't.
Yeah, and even in the context of meditation that I work with, that meditation, it's a broad thing, and there's multiple different types of meditation, and the meditation that I facilitate and teach is actually the term bhavana is the traditional Pali word that is used in a Buddhist context.
Bhavana, how do you spell that?
Oh my gosh, I have no clue.
Okay.
I took like a 12-week course on Pali Sanskrit, and I've learned in 12 weeks that language is really hard. So, so bhavana, I think it's bhavana is actually how it's pronounced, but don't quote me on that. It's translated as cultivation. So meditation in Buddhist context is a cultivation practice. So mindfulness would be a cultivation of present time awareness. That these heart practices that we're talking about, even kindness, compassion, gratitude, equanimity, that we're cultivating compassion for pain. We're cultivating appreciation for joy. We're cultivating loving kindness towards our fear.
And
So-
that is one of the things that you're talking about in the Summer of Love
correct.
series. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll get to that, guys, and you stay with us, and we have so much to share on our show
Yeah.
today. And so,
Uh-huh.
in meditation, now I've even heard of active meditation,
Sure.
and so that is where you're trying to meditate in daily life,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Doing the dishes, taking a shower, walking.
Yeah, and that's the idea of this cultivation that, like you're planting a seed and you're allowing this to grow. And so, especially for me, it is a lot easier to start with some sitting meditation practice. And any image you have right now about sitting meditation practice is probably right. Sitting on a cushion, cross-legged, eyes closed, watching the breath. And so allowing the mind to settle a bit, and doing some just concentration in there. And so the more we concentrate on the breath, the more the mind will settle a little bit, and more the day-to-day life we hopefully can be less stressed and more have that awareness about ourselves.
Present, being present,
Totally.
being aware of your thoughts.
Yes, yeah, those thoughts are tricky. Some of them are helpful, some of them are harmful.
Yeah, I'm reading a book right now, and the book it is about our thoughts and how our thoughts are not real.
Yeah.
And that we, to be aware of them and not to get attached to them. I think we're so attached to our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions, our feelings that we really hold tight to those things.
Yeah, and like in this meditation practice, just starting with the breath, and you start to notice that the body breathes all on its own. Nothing you need to do to start breathing. The ears hear on their own, the eyes see on their own, the skin feels the air on the skin all on its own. So we have all this automatic things happening in our system. And then we notice that the brain thinks all on its own. So this body is just trying to take care of itself, and thinking is just another process of the body trying to take care of itself. And I don't own these thoughts. They're going to arise and pass on their own. The more I self-identify with them, the more trouble I get. And it's just, even psychology, like metacognition, using the mind to view the mind is a powerful tool. Once we take a step back from our thoughts, we can eventually come back and see that we aren't our thoughts, and they're going to happen no matter what. When I talk about this concentration on the breath, I don't know, in my experience, there's no way of stopping the mind. That's not the goal. It's just to change the relationship. The non-attached appreciation to the mind is really kind of what we're going for.
Okay, you got to repeat that again. It's an unattached appreciation for the mind. I like that. So it's where you're more aware that you're watching your thoughts.
Yes, totally. And sometimes you start seeing thought patterns. Sometimes we can see we have this addiction sometimes to the mind. We have these addictive thought patterns. And even when I talk about a cultivation practice, how much I know I was cultivating hate, how much I was cultivating otherness, how much I was cultivating isolation. And I sit down and I have hate, isolation, fear, and all of this is going and going and going. I'm like, and so in order to see this, we have the seeing clearly and the responding wisely. I first need to see all this hate in me in order to find a healthy response to it. And approaching my own patterns of hatred in my thoughts, approaching that with care, not necessarily shutting the hatred out. The hatred isn't bad. There's nothing wrong with hatred. It's fine. It's part of the mind.
Yes.
It's what it does. And so finding space to hold that hatred for a little bit, to say, oh, I see you, I care about you. What is this hatred like, so I don't have to immediately react to hatred and believe it and attach myself to it. It's a very helpful practice. And so when we start seeing that pattern happening, we can actually cultivate that approach where I was even saying this loving kindness towards myself. Oh, can I care about exactly where I'm at? Loving kindness towards the body, towards the mind, towards the heart. And it's all this system that hatred exists just because, for me, a lot of shame, just a lot of conditioning of I'm not good enough.
Okay, that's a huge one.
Yes,
we've got to dive into this.
Anytime we throw shame into the situation.
And I'm not good enough. Like that is such a recurring, that comes up so often in my clients, and no matter what their journey has been. And so can you tell us a little bit about your journey, because I know it's got to be from somewhere to make you get into this meditation and counseling and really healing others. It's probably started from a healing yourself.
Yeah, definitely. It's sometimes when I tell my story and give biographies and all that, it's a insight that goes with that life is both beautiful and tragic. There's aspects of life that are terrible, and there's aspects of life that are beautiful, and I'm just trying to find a way to be okay in the middle of it. So I come from a place of privilege, of upper middle class suburban family, and at the same time I come from an alcoholic family. And so there's that beauty there of having a family and having a place to land with family, some great memories, and at the same time there's some hurt around that with having a family. I'm pretty sure that's just a relatable thing. If families equal difficulty and they equal wonderful aspects of it.
We all have our stuff,
And,
right? We
yeah.
all get our stuff and our stories from
Yeah.
our families.
And my father, due to lifestyle and due to just his own suffering, he had died from alcoholism, and that affected me in a great way. And after
How old
that,
were you?
23, and it was a terrible experience. I'm the one that found him dead, and it hit me really hard. And from there on, for about 5 years, I was more. I took refuge. In this practice, we talk about taking refuge. We take a place to find home, a place to settle. I took refuge in the punk rock scene. And so I was in a band, and we toured the country, and made lots of friends, and also there was drugs, alcohol, violence. Along with that, the beauty of having a place to go with friendship, and then the tragedy of the violence and drugs and alcohol that go along with that. And it also got me through the day. All that chaos was also helpful for me until it wasn't anymore. And I've had plenty of friends died due to that lifestyle of suicide, due to drunk driving accidents, and it's amazing.
I've seen a lot of tragedy.
Yes, definitely. Seen a lot of beauty too, and yes, a lot of tragedy. And I don't think people start meditating until they see some tragedy. I don't run into many people that go, hey, I'm thinking about doing meditation because my life is doing so great. And normally it's hey, I'm a little stressed out at work, or I am, in recovery from drug addiction, or whatever it may be. There's a certain amount of suffering that leads us to a certain amount of freedom. Even the Thai Forest monk Ajahn Chah says there's suffering that leads to more suffering, and there's suffering that leads to an end of suffering. And so I've had a great amount of suffering that's led me to an end of suffering. So there's so much beauty in my tragedy. And
I'm glad you found that.
I am very confused on how I found it. I come from a very small town in Florida where Buddhist practices, meditation practices, weren't much of a thing. And luckily, I oddly made friends with a Soto Zen Buddhist monk in a small town in Florida, and he really taught me a way that really works for me. So I'm
So you
grateful.
met him in your hometown?
Oh yeah. I was reading his book. I started reading all these Dharma books, all these Buddhist books, Buddha Dharma books, and there's a lot of like books that were written for like Dharma Punks is a book written for my type of people. Hardcore Zen is another book. So people are making this connection between punk rock lifestyle and Buddhist practices. And I just started reading every sort of American Buddhist book I could read.
What was that connection? Why was it that, is it because they saw that there was that suffering, that there was that hurt that led to the...
Something works, Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of these books are about all of these books are about personal experience. The Buddhist practice isn't an idea, it isn't like a belief system, it's actual practice. And so these books come from experience. That they're even the saying, wisdom written down on paper isn't true wisdom. You have to live it. And so these are just instructions on how people lived. And even like punk rock is like the first noble truth of Buddhist practice is there's suffering and embrace the suffering. Punk rock is the soundtrack for the first noble truth. We know they're suffering, we're admitting they're suffering. And so when I find a place where people are like, yes, you're valid in your aggression, you're valid in your anger, it is okay, it makes sense that you're so angry. And we can do something with this. We can live well with this. And it's like, oh, well, thank you. I've had so much invalidation in life that anger's not allowed, and that, just be quiet, don't be disruptive. And luckily...
The music is bad.
Yeah, it's
all
bad.
These things are...
And so we're piling more shame on more shame.
Right.
And so luckily that connection has been made that we can acknowledge that life is tough. So we can live well with it. So having that connection there, and then my original root teacher, he was not a punk rocker. He was actually a Vietnam veteran that through his post-traumatic stress found Buddhist practices. And I was reading his book, and then one day he walked in to my work. and was like, hey, I'm reading your book. And it was just the weirdest thing. One of those I can't
Wow,
explain things
yeah.
in life, but life is tricky like that. Yeah, I just started meditating with him, and yeah, seemingly saved my life. So very grateful for those odd situations of people showing up.
So one of the questions that I'd asked you earlier is, what is the difference between the Buddhist meditation and then transcendental meditation?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of getting that grasp of it, because the transcendental, I look at it because I've told you I have a client that is having extreme nerve pain.
Yeah.
And I think that transcendental meditation probably would be really helpful for her to come away from that and not identify with it. But then the Buddhist meditation, you're saying, is more to identify with it?
Not identify, but acknowledge it.
Allow it?
Allow it, embrace it, care for it. Something like even like physical pain. Physical pain, emotional pain. Pain is pain. Even if it's parts of the brain that light up with pain, whether it's physical, emotional, same part of the brain. And so what is our relationship for pain? Our natural human tendency, our system is set up to hate pain. Pretty natural.
Want it to go away,
Needs
push
to
it
go.
away, stuff
Needs to get out of here.
Right.
This is intruding on me. I don't feel okay. Get it out. And so even like the name Against the Stream, that's where that comes from. It is total counterintuitive to see the pain and care for the pain. And even like physical pain, if you're in physical pain, even look at the pain, find the edges of the pain. Well, is it a 10 right now? Is it a 2 right now? How can I care for this pain? And there's also bearing down and backing off, too, where transcendental meditation can give you a break, I think. I don't know much about transcendental meditation, but also that we do have in this practice that we can bear down with the pain, care for the pain, see the pain, hold the pain, or we can actually use practices to back off from the pain a little bit and say, oh, not right now, this is not my time to be with this pain. I can use the breath, use the sounds, use what's available to me to keep me present, and maybe take a break from being with the pain. But ultimately, if we notice that pain's going to be here.
Right.
It's going to be here.
So it reminds me of, I do a practice called Yoga Nidra. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay, so it's exactly what you're saying there. It's to, whether it's a physical pain or an emotional pain, to go into it, and the best way that was described to me, it's like you've got to feel it to heal it.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Love it. Yeah.
And so, because we stuff so much stuff, and so many emotions, pain, hurt, anger, all of those things that, okay, it's not okay to be hurt. It's not okay to be angry. It's not okay to feel these things or sad.
Yep.
So we stuff them. Doesn't mean they go away.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know, there's, to a certain degree, there's so much on this. I'm trying to find the landing point on how important what you just said is. The feeling it to heal it. The core teachings of the Buddha are to embrace our suffering, to end the reactivity from suffering, and experience the freedom from suffering, and act in an accordance way with the Eightfold Path, with ethics and meditation. So that, where I'm talking about Against the Stream being counterintuitive, that we can love our pain. Love, like I said, that word is kind of loaded in a certain way, but connect with our pain, and we can also have a non-attached appreciation to our pleasure. And so in this balance, that's counterintuitive. We're supposed to cling on to pleasure and say pleasure is right and pleasure is correct, rather than having this like appreciation as it comes and it goes. And then on the other end of that, we're talking about the unpleasant side, the pain side, to embrace it and know it, and then we don't have to put up a front that the cause for suffering is reactivity. So reactivity is that pain is in me, I have to get it out in whatever way possible. And so whatever way possible, we can use drugs, we can use alcohol, we can use these addictive thought patterns that we're talking about. And so can we just cut that and go, oh, pain is here. It's going to be here. Can I care for this pain as well as I can? And so fully knowing our pain and fully knowing our processes of the pain, fully know where the head goes, the mind goes with the pain, fully know what my habits are around pain. And pain, and that's what I'm saying, emotional pain, even some of these implicit, unknown precognitive pain in us, that the body keeps the score, that if we can just take time to experience what's happening in our body, we have such a reactive body.
So when you say the body keeps the score,
Yeah.
that sounded cool. What do you mean?
Well, that's a reference to a book called, by Bessel van der Kolk. It's actually a book on trauma. And so the body keeps the score when it's this implicit emotional tendencies. I just got done finished watching 13 Reasons Why season 2. I don't know if you ever saw that.
I have not.
It's a wonderful and terrible show. It's talking about wonderful and terrible. It's about a high school student, a young lady, ends up killing herself, and she has tapes that say, "This is the reasons why I killed myself." And so I'm watching that show, and my body's just getting tight, and it's all in my body. This reactive,
yes.
and so we think emotions maybe this thought process, maybe this like idea about it has some, but these emotions are like clusters of impulses in the body, and the reason why that is that there's so much stored in our brain that is from this primitive aspect of the brain. That we're storytelling beings. We have this hippocampus in us that has something with the emotional significance and goes, oh, this has happened in my life. This is emotionally significant. I could tell you a story about it. But whenever it's too high on the emotional significance, it gets stored in more primitive parts of our brain, like the amygdala. So the amygdala
causes a stress response.
Causes a stress response that is that like fight, flight, freeze
Yes.
response that doesn't have intellectual context. It doesn't have the storytelling
And
aspect
we're
of it.
constantly being exposed to things like that. Like even, okay, you intentionally watched, this documentary, right?
Yeah, it's actually it's a show. It's like a teen drama, but as you were.
But we're constantly being exposed to things like that, whether it's that we're watching an ER show or a cops show or I don't watch that actually. But it's like this constant.
This conversation is over because I watch so much TV.
We're constantly doing that to ourselves, whether we are intending to or not.
Yeah.
And it's this constant stressor.
Yeah. It's going to be in life. If my happiness is dependent on me never feeling anything, I ain't going to be happy. And
That's like, because people think, okay, I want to be happy. Everybody wants to be happy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I know our listeners want to be happy. And is it the I just lost my train of thought because one of our listeners she said living with chronic pain. I know that we have quite a few listeners that are living with chronic pain.
Yeah.
And so I think that is speaking directly to our listeners that, feel it, embrace it, see, like when you're saying, what does that look like? Going right to where it is and loving it.
Yeah, and where I talk about experience, that I do like to just speak from my own experience and to be sensitive on that subject. I don't experience chronic pain. So, I can give all the instructions all day long about loving your pain. I don't experience it. So, the Buddha even said there's this term, ehipassiko. Go see for yourself. Go see for yourself. Can you cultivate care and love and connection with your pain and change your relationship to the pain and experience it? If you can't, that's totally fine too. And there's no right or wrong aspect of pain. What gets you through the day? Just do that. So, that's not an area that I'm too familiar with.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
And what about a Christian?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is is this a religious practice? It's
Who knows? I really cared much. You know, I generally avoid that question, really, because whatever works for you. Hey, if I'm not going to tell you not to be a Christian, or not, or to be a Buddhist. Or, the instructions that are given is don't worry about being a Buddhist, be a Buddha. So a Buddha is somebody who's awakened. We have this historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, that existed 2,500 years ago, and that guy's dead. What we're trying to do is cultivate this awakeism, Buddhism, awakeism. Buddha means awake. So we're trying to find the Buddha in us. There's even the Zen saying, if you see the Buddha along the path on the side of the road, kill him. Because Buddha's in here. Buddha's in your heart. Wake up your own heart. Take refuge in this internal process that's happening. And whether that aligns with a Christian faith or Islamic faith or any other faith.
It's kind of like a yoga practice. There are some people that feel like that is not, it is a practice.
Sure.
And
yeah, and there's even like a movement now with secular Buddhism that it's where I described the Four Noble Truths just now in a way that is a practice. It's not a belief system. Sometimes a belief system will be set up that the first noble truth is life is suffering. I don't know if that's really intention of Buddhist practice. That Buddhist practice is more about embrace your suffering, fully know your suffering,
Notice
so therefore you can become non-reactive to your suffering. And so it's not this metaphysical truth statement or belief system that I've been practicing in multiple traditions, Theravada, Zen, and I've never had this blind faith of creeds or commandments around it. It's more, go see for yourself if this is suitable for you. And if you're into a religion, that's cool. If you're into TV shows, that's cool too. If you're into comic books, that's rad. If you're into certain types of music, that's cool. I don't know if that's really a I don't know, issue. I'm trying to find the right word. I don't want to say issue, but an issue.
Yes. Yeah. And so then you're also a counselor.
Well, I do mentoring. I think technically I do have a master's degree in counseling psychology, and I do apply Buddhist principles and Buddhist practices toward predominantly people working in recovery, addiction recovery, and the broad end of any sort of recovery, substances or process addictions, even anxiety, addiction to the mind, I was saying. So yeah, I do one-on-one work there because I feel like that is a very important part of this practice, that we think about Buddhist monks that hide in the Himalayas in a carved out cave and sit in meditation by themselves. Sure, that from time to time people can do that, but one of the main factors of this Buddhist practice that we have our 3 refuges. I actually have them tattooed on my elbow, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So Sangha is that Pali word that means community. And so this is very important. They even have like the cliches of like, your mind is like a bad neighborhood, don't go in there by yourself. Mm-hmm. And I never have. I've always had a teacher with me. I've always had somebody guiding me. Sure, I sit at home. Sure, I sit on retreats in silence. And I still check in with somebody and say, hey, this is what's coming up. Let me just talk about it. And, where do you see my practice going? And so community is a very strong aspect of this practice, and even in general as people.
Yes, I agree.
It's we're pack animals. That's their innate human capacity to live. We're not necessarily good hunters. We're not good hole diggers. We don't climb trees well. Our basic human survival strategy is living together. We build houses together. We work together. We're very pro-social, and that pro-social aspect of human capacity is innately in us. That these aspects of kindness towards one another are ingrained in us because this is evolutionary survival in us. And unfortunately, through our causes and conditions, we guard our hearts some, and we become more isolated and more separate, more hateful, and more greedy, and so that's what we're trying to do in this practice, is cut through some of that conditioning in us that hardened our hearts a little bit and get into the core nature of what it is to be a human, the core nature to care for one another, care for ourselves.
Love one another.
Love one another.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because at the beginning we said, okay, let's talk about love.
Yeah.
Definition of love.
Definition of love. I do it very simple. I like keeping it simple. Connection. Love is a synonym for connection. In whatever way that ends up looking, where connection is, you hear a song on the radio, I love that song. Why? Because you have some sort of connection to it. With me, that I feel like we're talking about, like self-love is more, I want to say more important, but it's emphasized because the whole idea, I hated it back in the day when people say, yo, you can't love anybody unless you love yourself. And through actual seeing for myself, that's true in my experience. That love as an idea of connection, that can I connect with my own hatred, my own fear, my own joy, my own whatever this human experience is, so I can actually connect with other people. And so whenever I'm in a moment of empathy, if somebody brings up a story of I'm going through a hard time, so we tend to have these two different aspects of this. Can we, one aspect is, well, you have a problem, let me fix it. And that can be helpful in certain ways, but that's not love. That's not a connection to it. So if somebody comes with me a problem, and I can hear out their problem, hold space for their problem, because I know what that feels like. We have emotion contagion as humans. We're set up, if I start crying right now, good chance you would start crying, because it's just that feeling of we feel into each other's emotions. So if I'm not available for that aspect of sadness to arise in myself, I wouldn't be available for your own sadness.
Right.
And we wouldn't have that connection as love. And so that connection is an aspect. I even heard love described as, it was a very dry definition, co-regulation of emotion. I can write that on my Valentine's Day cards.
Yes, I co-regulate my emotion with you.
Yes, it's so romantic. And I don't want to cut the romance out of it too. That's it's beautiful and wonderful. That's
right.
Yeah.
But you're talking like loving one another, just
loving yourself. What loving yourself is, just connecting with whatever's inside of you, with this non-reactive nature of, I can be with this. I can be with you as you are. I care about you. This is okay. Just fine. And then, because there is the idea of empathy distress. If somebody brings up an emotion that's too much for you, and it brings up that distress in you, and you have that body keeps the score stuff, that precognitive emotion in you that's telling you, get the hell out. And then you go, you may not be available to that. This isn't right or wrong, too. If you're not available for somebody's emotion, you're not available for somebody's emotion.
Well, that's an interesting, okay, so because I know that there are, let's talk about highly sensitive people that take in, I think that one of the biggest things that highly sensitives need to do, need to learn, is to have the boundaries, right?
Totally.
So that they can have empathy, but not take it in.
Yeah.
And so being available, having that connection, but not taking it in on your own.
Yeah, different attachment styles. Where my attachment style, coming from a lot of shame, is to isolate and separate and hate on people, which other people can have an attachment style of, I want you to like me, I want you to like me, I want you to like me. And we all have different tendencies and conditions that we're working with in our inner system, and it's having value. We even said earlier that I am very grateful for a lot of my suffering, because it led me to a place of finding freedom. And it's not my job to alleviate somebody else's suffering, because you can learn from that suffering.
Well, not only can you learn, but you can't alleviate someone else's suffering.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't. it's fun, like where I say I want to talk from my experience, but I do experience it on the other end, where to get a little personal in this, that I knew from maybe about 15 on, there was something about me in that shame or alcoholism and my own alcoholism in me, that I just didn't feel like knew how to be a person. So what I did was manipulate women. So I have never lived on my own. I've always had a woman living with me, whether it's my mom or girlfriend or now wife. And I've always had somebody alleviating that suffering for me, taking care of me, saying, oh, he can't do that. I'll do this for him. I'll take care of his laundry, or I'll take care of his car. I'll take care of this and that, because he, it's this process of looking like this is helpful, when in the true messages of that, where I'm receiving that message is, you're not good enough to do your own laundry. You're not good enough to take care of your car. You're not good enough to do this. And on the surface, yeah, it looks like, yeah, they're being helpful. But in the long run, you're sending these shaming messages to me. And until I, got to a place where somebody says, hey, you need to take care of this, it was like, wow, that stings at first. I'm going to fight this at every cost because I don't feel like I can be a person. And then, therefore, now I'm, slowly gaining momentum to be an adult. But, yeah, the shame is kind of subsiding a little bit, because it's like, no, people expect me to live a life as an adult and expect me to do the day-to-day normal things. Like, I can do this, So sometimes some of that stepping over boundaries, yeah, harmful in my experience, definitely. And to have that true growth of, I think, like, if you fully, once again, back to that first noble truth of fully knowing your suffering, you'll get that there is a certain amount of appreciation that comes with that. Like, I'm oddly glad that I've been through hell, So, and I don't want to sound like that you have to be glad.
No, but it's
like
you've embraced it.
I've embraced it, but it's not like yeah, I'm glad. No. I would rather that not happen to me. I'd rather that not happen to people, and it happens. What can I do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can either embrace it. You've chosen to embrace it.
Oh, choice is another thing. It's I'm very grateful that causes. Everything comes from causes. Everything, all this momentum in life, that I don't really know how much choice I had in my life. I don't know how much choice somebody has to go to war. I don't know how much choice somebody has to be an addict. I don't know how much choice somebody has to be a great influencer in the life. It's just the cause that we go through in this life. And luckily, we can recondition ourselves in these causes with meditation practice, community, healing, and if you don't know that's available, that's not part of your cause. So we're all doing the best we can.
I know, we're all learning, which is wonderful, and growing. And one of the things that our listeners can do is to learn and grow through the Summer of Love retreat series. And so let's talk about that for a minute, because I really want to share. And again, you've done an amazing job on the postcards. They're beautiful.
My DIY punk rock causes and conditionings have gotten me really good at some self-promotion and making flyers. So.
Yeah. So tell me about the Summer of Love retreat series. It's a 4-day long meditation retreat on the heart practices. And you're facilitating with Andrew Chapman.
Yep.
And it's going to be the fourth Saturday of every month from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. You're going to go through kindness, compassion, gratitude, equanimity. So can you share a little bit more with us?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. That the 23rd of this month will be the first one. That we're doing this Against the Stream Buddhist Meditation Society at 3123 Gallatin Pike. If you want to learn more about that, it's againstthestreamnashville.com. The first aspect of this is the loving kindness practice. That loving kindness comes from the Metta Sutta. That even the word metta, that this is the root word for loving kindness, that Pali word, going back to the traditional language of the Buddha, that sometimes that loving aspect of it, going back to that word, is troublesome. So some people do kind friendliness, just kindness.
Oh, and that's because of our stuff, right?
But it's because our conditioning around love. And so connective kindness, where I want to use love as a synonym for connection. So connective kindness is what we're doing here. And traditionally this was given as a practice that monks went out into the forest and they were scared of tree ghosts. So they went on retreat to the forest, tree ghosts showed up, and they were scared and couldn't meditate. They couldn't go on retreat. And so they went back to the Buddha and said, hey, we're scared, what do we do? And then he says, oh, welcome ease and safety and gladness to all beings everywhere. Simple as that, just go for it. And, okay. And then we are not scared anymore. So that's the instructions we're given. Like I said, this is actual cultivation practice. It's not as simple as reading a scripture, like a sutta, and going, oh, okay, cool, loving kindness, got it. No, this is something we actually have to start with very slowly. Start with just loving what's going on in ourselves, connecting, welcoming ease. We use traditional phrases that will actually set that inclination of the mind that we have. What one ponders upon becomes the inclination of the mind. And even like in neuroscience, it's connected with the neural pathways, that there's plasticity in the brain. So if you constantly ponder upon ease, you'll have that inclination of the mind. And the more you're pondering upon this ease, so we say phrases, my personal phrases that I use are, may I be at ease, may I be safe, may I be happy, and may I be free. And so when we say this to ourselves, that this is a response to fear. And so fear has a lot of layers to it. And so when we start subsiding this fear is just a protection of the heart. That something's going on in me, I'm trying to stay safe. Okay, not terribly unwholesome. It's just when it oversteps a boundary and it gets in the way of what we need to do.
I like
Go
the way that you
meditate
said
in the
it.
woods.
Right,
you know?
right. Fear is getting in the way of things. Yeah.
And so ease and safety. When we welcome ease and safety upon ourselves, generally one or two ways this can go, that things come up. So when things come up, we have one end, pain. And then the other end, joy. And so what do we do with the pain? We have the next retreat. When pain arises, we meet it with compassion. And so we do a cultivation of compassion practice, meeting our pain with care. And that our pain is valuable, that our pain has some messages in it, and this pain we can care for it. That even compassion has such a lovely connotation to it.
So when you say pain, you're talking emotional pain or physical pain or both? What do you see mostly?
Look at both.
Okay.
Ultimately both, but with me, where I want to talk from my experience, most of it is emotional pain. And even physical pain has an emotional connection to it.
Absolutely.
And so whenever we meet pain with compassion, Stanford has done brain scans on Buddhist monks meditating on compassion. And what happens in the body is it's a stress response at first. So we think compassion, it's like a lovely word, a nice idea, but you sit still with compassion and immediately your cortisol hits the system, stress response hits the system, and there could be an idea of like, I'm doing this wrong. Meditation's supposed to feel good, and not in this case. Not in this case. We're trying to approach that. The pain shows up, we got a stress response in the system, and then a shift happens. And when that shift happens with this, like, I can be with this, oxytocin is released, where oxytocin is the neurochemical of hugging. You know, like the hugging, that's that love. That's a love chemical. So whenever you can feel connected with somebody,
for 20 seconds or more.
We have to work with that negativity bias too. Yeah, so that oxytocin is released, connective, I can be with this. And then when we actually welcome the freedom that comes, may you be free from your suffering. May I be free from the suffering. That compassion, that these phrases that I can care about the suffering, I see you suffering, may I be free from this suffering. And when I welcome freedom from suffering, actually it gives a reward, a dopamine response is released. So dopamine's connected to you know, substances, sleep, sex. And so even compassion has an aspect of reward. So even in relational compassion, where I talk about empathy as an aspect of, oh, okay, you're bringing up a problem that's in your life, and I can actually hold space for that, and so oxytocin will be released. And then actually internally, I can have some compassion. And so, like, welcoming freedom, and maybe that meditating, relational meditation, maybe not saying it out loud, but even like feeling into, oh, may you be free from this suffering. I see you're suffering. Maybe you're free. And we'll actually have an actual reward in our system. So therefore, we're getting that pro-social reward to be with one another, to care for one another, and it feels good. And that's, you know, that true happiness. That true happiness is cultivated.
So it's a day of meditation from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Correct.
Are you meditating the whole time?
No.
So tell me what you do in this.
Yeah. Yeah. To a certain degree, it's what's needed in the room, and another part is there'll be a decent amount of meditation, and it may be difficult, and I think it's okay to put yourself in a place. If you stay in these comfort zones,
if it stays when it's all just easy, you're not going to grow.
Yeah, it's like comfort zones aren't that comfortable. You know, if you want things to be different, you have to do things differently.
Yeah.
And so maybe having a little effort to show up for yourself and put yourself on a chair or a cushion and sit in meditation for a day. And we will do relational practices. Where I talk about compassion as a relational practice, even loving kindness is a relational practice. That we will do some work around that. We'll do some walking meditation where being active, and some walking meditation or even activities around meditation practice helps us translate it into the world, especially these day-longs. And we sit in meditation and go, oh, how do I do this in life?
Yes.
And then,
so let's talk about that. And I don't want to get away from the Summer of Love retreat series, because I really want for people to understand that. But I do that I guess I'm speaking for me, because it's hard for me to sit down and just
me too.
Sit and meditate. So I think, okay, I'm going to do it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I can do it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I don't do it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Then I think, I can do walking meditation.
There you go.
I can do cleaning the horse stall meditation.
Girl. I can't do that meditation.
But I can, the meditations during activity.
Totally. Yeah, and it's starting 5 minutes is totally suitable. And do what you can, and that's where I say this momentum that we set. You start 5 minutes, great, and then see where you go from there. See where you go from there. See where you go from there, and whatever is helpful for you. That is the main thing. Okay. It doesn't mean sitting an hour a day may be terrible for you, and sitting 5 minutes a day may be appropriate for you. It's whatever works for you. And at the same time, know when you're slacking off, and it's that effort. Effort is like a tricky thing. The Buddha described it as a stringed instrument. If you tune it too tight, it's not going to sound right. You tune it too loose, and it ain't going to sound right. You got to have it tuned properly. So you want to make yourself a tuned instrument where you know whether you're being too loose or too tough on yourself.
Okay, so going back to the Summer of Love retreat series, and so the fourth Saturday of every month from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. At Against the Stream. Yeah. And so we talked about, so on June 23rd is the first one for this summer.
Correct.
And it will be, your focus is kindness.
Kindness.
Then July 28th is compassion.
Yep.
August 25th is gratitude.
Gratitude. I haven't talked about gratitude.
I love gratitude.
Well, that's the thing. I think we have kind of these different attachment styles, where obviously I love talking about pain. It's something that comes up in me, and it's like, oh yeah, there's freedom of pain, and maybe I require a little bit more effort around this. The term we use, mudita, is the Pali word, appreciative joy, gratitude, sympathetic joy, that we can have joy in other people's joy. I think it's the Dalai Lama said, if you can only find joy in yourself, you're cutting your opportunity for joy from 1 to 7 billion. And so we can find joy in other people's joy. And with me, where I'm an isolator, I generally don't like people, and I find every way to mentally assassinate them. And
which is interesting because you also crave them and crave community and
doesn't make any sense, you know? yeah, that's what, okay, I know what, intellectually, what works as a human, and sure, I have this mind that doesn't like stuff, doesn't like people, you know, and that may be some blunt honesty, but how do I meet this? And I meet this with appreciative joy. I went on retreat. It was a week-long retreat, and in the middle of the retreat, you probably would have liked it, but I did not. There was a dancing portion. There was like mindful movements, dancing, and so I'm on this silent retreat, and then all of a sudden they're playing like this dance music, and I hated it. I hated it. And throughout the day, I was just like, oh man, this doesn't belong here.
Did you know it was coming? And so,
not really,
okay.
kind of not really, but I knew like after it happened the first time and I tried to dance, I was like, okay, this is stupid, like I don't like this. And so after a while of hating these other people, and it was like a Dharma Punks retreat, and it was like people my age, tattoos, like the same type of music, had every reason to get along with everybody at the retreat, but then I still found that way to isolate by saying, they're dancing, they like dancing, not my people. And so therefore, this practice of mudita, this gratitude, appreciative joy, and sympathetic joy came up. And so I started actually shifting my practice to rooting for the people. So they're getting a lot out of this dancing practice. They're crying, they're just like, hearts are pouring out while they're dancing in meditation. And me, I'm like, okay, not for me. This is lame, this is stupid. And then it's like, okay, how do I meet that? Lame, you know, mind saying this is lame and stupid. Oh, well, they're getting something out of it. And so I started opening my heart up to people around me that were getting something out of this practice and caring for this practice. And so therefore my heart opened up to them. I didn't go into the dancing, like,
still didn't
care about the dancing, but I still like found great joy out of other people. And I took on this practice for like a year, just, you know, rooting for people. If I find something, if I want to separate myself from somebody, what's helping them? Can I root for them? Can I be their cheerleader? And that helps, that something cultivates in me. There's so much in life that we feel like if life goes our way, that equals happiness. If I get the right job, if I get the right car, and then these jealousy comes up, and all those things are going to break.
And it's never enough.
Never enough. It's dissatisfactory in general. But you know what true happiness is finding that heart in us. Happiness is internal. Happiness is cultivated. Happiness is a collection of healthy habits. And so
I like that.
Jack Kornfield, I stole that from him. Credit to Jack Kornfield. And so that happiness isn't somewhere else. That the Buddha taught, seek no external refuge. Find the internal refuge. Find this internal happiness, that so you can find happiness no matter what the conditions are. And whatever, you're in a dance hall on a meditation retreat, find a way to find happiness in that spot. Probably easier for other people. If you're in line at the DMV, try to find something relatable. If you're in a situation that you've gone your whole life hating, try to find what's in you that's giving you a sense of well-being. You know, not happiness is a loaded word. Well-being. You know.
And I think also recognizing and acknowledging and being aware of what it is that is bothering you about that situation, like what you were saying.
Yeah, it was shame, definitely, yeah. And where I say I spent a year feeling into joy of others, I also spent a good pound of that year just feeling what shame feels like. And shame has that mental dialogue of where Brene Brown, I love her stuff on shame, where she says that shame is that I am a mistake versus guilt is I made a mistake. But even in this, bloated capitalist, economic system where we're selling people stuff that you don't have enough, you will have enough when you get this, or you're not enough, you're not pretty enough, buy this product, or do this if you want to be happy, to sell you something. It works in that way, but even then, we don't even have to have guilt to feel shame. Just existing gives us shame in this modern culture. And just finding a way to touch into shame. And that shame in me was in the body. It was a sadness in the body. It was the pressure on my shoulders. It was a general disappointment in life. What and I'm using these words to describe experience. What is disappointment? What is sadness? And just even sitting with a heart right now, what is it? What is this? What is this? And right now, you may be experiencing a lot of things, but in certain points where sadness arises, my head tells me I'm not good enough. And
then, okay, so equanimity.
Equanimity is
That
a word
is on,
you don't hear that often.
It is not.
Yeah.
And so September 22nd, Summer of Love Retreat Series, it will wrap up the whole series.
Totally.
And equanimity.
Yeah, and this isn't a linear process of this to this to this to this. And at the same time, I like how the Brahma Viharas, these heart practices that we're talking about of kindness, compassion, gratitude, and equanimity are set up like this because equanimity, a word not normally in our context,
Yes, you're right.
is a word that describes balance. Where I even started this conversation to find balance in my life. Finding a way to be with the beauty and the tragedy that is natural in life. Can I be in the middle of all of this? And without finding ways to be reactive to it. And of course, there's responses. I don't want to say, even socially, that there needs to be healthy responses, even things like the Me Too movement, or just being outspoken about social issues, political issues. I'm not trying to set up a place to be a Buddhist doormat, but to have a healthy response versus reactivity that is not fully known.
Yeah, and I think that when you talk about balance, I try to tell everyone, it's not a destination.
Yeah.
There is never going to come a time that you are just in balance.
Yeah.
It's always that finding balance.
Yeah, and it's a
journey.
It's cultivated, like just like the other ones. I love using that word cultivation because even thinking like things like cultivation where you think like gardening or something like that, where it takes a long time.
And we work on it.
And it's a commitment
and to find balance in your life is what we talk about on the magnetic heart all the time. And that it's when you're looking at relationships, when you're looking at yourself love and your self-care, and then also taking care of the world around you, looking at enjoying your work, enjoying your purpose in life, that all of these things need to be cultivated.
Definitely the enjoying aspect and the caring aspect, where I like your language versus mine, and it's we should rub off on each other. I think a little bit, where you're like enjoying this, enjoying that, and I'm like, oh, I hate this, I hate that, and I think this is a very balanced conversation. It's an equanimous radio show right now.
So, if someone is interested, they can either go to one or all of your Summer of Love retreat series.
Yeah.
And if they're interested in finding out more, how are they going to find out more?
Yeah, AgainstTheStreamNashville.com, or even if you just look up Against the Stream Nashville, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have a podcast. I'm featured on the podcast if you like anything that I'm saying. And generally, what is talked about at Against the Stream is on these subjects, on the core teachings of the Buddha. We try to make it available to anybody. So religion, sexual orientation, genders, anybody, really. We want to be as inclusive and create that momentum and inclusivity in this country. And so if you don't meditate, that's cool. If you're interested in meditation and want to just come check it out, that's cool. Whatever you got, it's totally fine. And AgainstTheStreamNashville.com is where you sign up. They'll send you through all of that stuff. We have a PayPal. You can sign up on the website, or you can just pay the day you show up. We're totally loose. We try to look organized, but whatever. Just come show up, have a good time. Yeah, I also teach a Sunday morning class. So this Sunday morning I'll be teaching up there at 10 a.m.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mikey.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you were
Yeah,
on the
thanks
show.
oh my gosh, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.